The wind tore across the cliffside with a roar that could shake the bravest soul, but Amara simply laughed. It wasn't a small, polite laugh. It was a sharp, fearless sound that cut through the storm like a challenge to the universe itself. Her fingers clung to the jagged rocks, knuckles white, heart hammering, not from fear, but from the sheer thrill of defiance. Most people would have turned back long ago. Not her. She thrived where others crumbled. Amara had earned a reputation that preceded her. In the city below, whispers followed her name like shadows. Death's jester, they called her, half in admiration, half in disbelief. She had faced plunging rivers, lightning storms, and collapsing rooftops. Every time, she returned with that same cheeky grin and a story that left others shaking their heads. And yet, for all her daring stunts, for all the chaos she chased, there was a loneliness she hid beneath the bravado, a subtle ache she refused to name. Her life was a constant dance with danger. One moment she was racing through the crowded streets of the city on a motorcycle, wind whipping her hair, lights blurring into streaks of gold and red. The next, she was perched atop a storm-battered cliff, rain slicking the rocks beneath her feet. Amara lived in extremes, yet her heart carried a quiet longing that no thrill could fill. She joked about it, made light of it, but deep down, she craved something, or someone, who could match her courage, and maybe, just maybe, understand her heart. The city stretched behind her, a maze of concrete and glass, a stark contrast to the jagged wilderness she called her playground. Cars honked in distant traffic jams, pedestrians bustled along sidewalks, unaware of the woman who laughed in the face of death above them. She found the hum of human life comforting and mundane all at once. It reminded her she was alive, but also painfully alone. Amara's eyes sparkled with mischief as a bolt of lightning cracked across the sky, illuminating her silhouette against the storm. She tilted her head back, letting the rain lash her face, letting the wind whip around her like a cloak of power. "Come on, death," she whispered to herself, "if you want me, you'll have to earn it." Her voice was bold, teasing, the kind that made danger itself pause and think twice. And yet, beneath the fearless exterior, there were cracks. Moments when she wondered what it would be like to share her life, not just her adventures, with someone who could see the real Amara behind the mask of bravado. She had spent years alone, testing limits, tempting fate, and always winning. But what if one day, someone could challenge her not just on a cliff, or in a storm, but inside her very heart? She didn't know it yet, but that moment was coming. A presence, calm and confident, would soon step into her chaotic world. Someone who didn't flinch at her daring, someone who would see past the laughter, the stunts, and the show, into the quiet spaces of her soul. Someone who could make her question her own rules, about life, death, and the space in between where love might quietly wait. Amara shook her head, smiling at her own thoughts. For now, she was here, alive, untamed, and unstoppable. She laughed again, a sound that carried over cliffs and storms, daring the world to try and catch her. She didn't know that soon, her laughter would change, not because death was near, but because life had other plans for her heart. And somewhere in the shadows of the storm, unseen, a pair of calm, observant eyes watched. The winds carried whispers of a meeting that would shake her fearless world, a meeting that would test every rule she had ever lived by. The woman who laughed at death had no idea that fate had arrived, and that the adventure she thought she controlled was about to take an unexpected, beautiful turn. The storm had not relented. Rain fell in sheets, drumming against the rocky cliffside like the angry hands of a vengeful god. Amara's boots slipped on wet stones, but she moved with practiced precision, each step a careful dance between balance and danger. Every fiber of her being pulsed with adrenaline. This was the stunt she had been waiting for, a leap from the cliff to the jagged rocks below, a plunge that could kill anyone less skilled. She paused at the edge, the wind tearing at her jacket, and let herself grin. Most people would have cowered. But not Amara. Danger was her home, fear was her fuel. "All right, Death," she muttered under her breath, "show me what you've got." The leap was terrifying. The air roared in her ears, a relentless force that seemed to push her back, daring her to turn. And then, with a heartbeat of hesitation, she jumped. The world twisted around her, rock, rain, sky, and for a moment, nothing existed but the fall. And then came the snap. A jagged piece of rock, unseen in the blinding rain, cut across her path. She twisted mid-air, pain flashing in her side, heart leaping into her throat. For the first time in years, the thought of failure crept in, not as a whisper, but as a scream. Her fingers scraped against stone. Her lungs burned. Time slowed. And then she landed. Not gracefully. Not triumphant. But alive. Gasping, soaked, bruised, she crawled onto a ledge, trembling as the storm battered her like punishment. Her heart thundered, but this time, it was not the familiar surge of excitement, it was raw, unfiltered fear. She laughed anyway, a breathless, wild sound that carried over the storm. "Almost got me, huh?" she whispered, her voice shaking. And that was when she saw him. He was standing under the sparse shelter of a jagged outcrop, completely dry, completely calm. His dark eyes observed her, not with concern, but with a quiet, unnerving intensity. The storm whipped around him, tearing at his coat, whipping his hair into his face, and still he stood, unmoved. Amara blinked, staring at him as if seeing a ghost. Who are you?" she asked, her voice rough from the climb and the wind. He stepped closer, boots crunching on wet stone, and smiled faintly. "Someone who appreciates courage," he said, voice steady and low, carrying a calm that seemed impossible in the chaos around them. "And someone who recognizes when it's time to stop flirting with death." Her chest rose and fell with rapid breaths. For a moment, she wanted to scoff, to brush him off as some city dweller out of place in the wilderness. But something in his gaze made her pause. It wasn't fear, and it wasn't judgment. It was understanding, and something deeper, something dangerous, curiosity. Amara smirked, the old armor snapping back into place. "Flirting with death," she said, shaking her head. "I don't flirt. I dance." He chuckled softly, almost imperceptibly. "Then you dance very well. But even the best dancers stumble eventually." The words should have annoyed her, but instead, they prickled at her awareness. No one had ever said anything like that to her before. Not in the middle of a storm. Not after seeing her tumble and survive. It was different. Intriguing. As she struggled to catch her breath, she noticed small details, the way he stood so firmly despite the wet and wind, the calm in his posture that seemed almost unreal, the glint of something in his eyes, like he had been expecting her fall. A shiver ran down her spine, but not entirely from cold. "Are you some kind of storm chaser or," she began, still cautious, still daring him to laugh at her fear. "Something like that," he replied, his lips curving into a faint smile. "Or maybe just someone who's good at noticing when others tempt fate a little too often." Amara tilted her head, trying to read him, trying to find the usual arrogance or mockery she encountered in people. But he had none. Only calm. Only focus. Only awareness. And the thought unsettled her more than the cliff ever could. She laughed again, a short, nervous sound that was part relief, part incredulity. "Well, I've never met anyone like you. Most people would have panicked, screamed, or fainted by now. And you?" he asked quietly. "Do you ever feel the weight of it? The real danger?" Her grin faltered for a heartbeat. She wanted to say no, wanted to claim invincibility, but the truth pressed against her chest. Almost dying hurt. Almost dying left marks, even on someone like her. And yet, she shook her head quickly, masking the tremor with humor. "I thrive on it. The closer I get to death, the more alive I feel." He nodded slowly, as if noting the truth in her words, yet understanding the fragility beneath the boldness. Interesting, he said softly, how someone can flirt with the edge and still not see that life has a way of introducing unexpected partners into the dance. Amara blinked, startled at his metaphor. It lingered in the air, and for the first time, she wondered if this stranger, calm, unnerving, impossibly confident, was someone who could change the rules of her game. The storm raged on, relentless, and yet in that moment, a strange clarity settled over her. Death had not claimed her, and yet fate had arrived, not as a threat, but as a presence that promised to challenge everything she thought she knew. Amara straightened, gripping her jacket tighter against the wind, her pulse still racing. "Well, then," she said, smirking again, "let's see what game you're bringing to the dance." The mysterious man simply smiled, unshaken by her bravado, his gaze fixed on her with quiet certainty. And for the first time in a long time, Amara felt that her fearless life had met a challenge she might not be able to laugh off. Days passed since the storm, yet Amara couldn't stop thinking about him. Adrian. His name felt strange on her tongue, almost too calm, too deliberate for the chaotic life she led. She told herself it was just curiosity, a passing intrigue sparked by a stranger who had witnessed her flirtation with death. And yet, when she caught sight of him again in the crowded city streets, a jolt of something she didn't recognize coursed through her. They met first by chance, or perhaps fate, in a quiet courtyard hidden behind a row of bustling shops. Adrian was leaning casually against the stone wall, hands in his pockets, watching the world with a calm she found unnerving. When he saw her, a small, knowing smile touched his lips. "Back for more trouble?" he asked, voice steady, teasing. Amara arched an eyebrow. "Trouble finds me. I don't have to look for it." Her tone was playful, yet beneath it lay a pulse of curiosity she couldn't hide. Adrian chuckled softly, stepping closer. "And yet here you are, safe for now, but restless, as if waiting for the next dance with fate." She laughed, the sound light but edged with challenge. "You talk too much for someone who supposedly understands danger." "That's because understanding danger isn't just about surviving it," he said, eyes glinting with something almost like admiration. "It's knowing how to navigate it. And you have a reckless streak that's both impressive and infuriating." Amara felt her pulse quicken, not from fear this time, but from the awareness of his gaze, calm yet piercing. There was a rhythm to their conversation, a subtle push and pull, each word a challenge. She tossed a sly grin at him. "Impress me then. Show me you're not just another observer." And so began their game. A challenge here, a teasing remark there, each encounter layered with subtle daring. Adrian suggested climbing a crumbling staircase to a city rooftop. She met him there the next day, her grin wide, heart beating fast. She tested him with impossible stunts, balancing along narrow ledges, racing against the wind, but Adrian never faltered. He met her risks with calm precision, an unshakable presence that both frustrated and intrigued her. There was a strange chemistry to it. Every time she tried to assert dominance, he countered not with force, but with quiet strategy, like a chess game played at the edge of cliffs. Amara had never encountered anyone who refused to be impressed or intimidated, yet seemed to understand her instinct for danger. During one daring rooftop race, she lost her footing on a loose tile and tumbled, hitting the ground harder than expected. Pain flared in her shoulder, and for the first time, her bravado faltered. She swallowed a sharp hiss of discomfort, trying to hide it, but Adrian was there instantly, steadying her. "You're human," he said quietly, as if noting a fact rather than mocking her. "Even you can stumble." Her heart skipped. No one had ever spoken to her that way. She laughed, but it was lighter this time, tinged with something softer. "I can't believe you saw that," she muttered, brushing rain-slicked hair from her face. "I saw everything," he replied simply, eyes holding hers, steady and unflinching. And in that gaze, she sensed an understanding she hadn't expected. Their encounters became less about testing danger and more about testing each other. Words carried double meanings, glances lingered longer than they should, and the thrill of the chase shifted subtly from life-threatening stunts to a dance of hearts. Amara realized with a start that she was drawn to him, not because he was fearless, but because he saw her fearlessness and met it with quiet steadiness. Yet, she fought the feelings. Curiosity and attraction were dangerous, far more dangerous than a storm-battered cliff. She teased, she provoked, she laughed, all to maintain the armor of independence. Vulnerability was a risk she had never allowed herself. And still, in the rare moments when his calm eyes held hers, a strange warmth crept in, uninvited but undeniable. Adrian, too, seemed to be a mystery, his composure hinting at a past he did not reveal. Small things slipped, a distant look at night, a subtle hesitation before speaking of family, a shadow in his smile when danger was near. It was enough to make Amara wonder what shaped a man who could remain unmoved by storms, yet seemed so attuned to her spirit. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the city skyline, Amara perched atop a narrow ledge, feet dangling, wind tugging at her hair. Adrian stood beside her, calm as ever. The silence stretched between them, but it was not empty. She finally admitted to herself what she had tried to deny: the thrill she felt in his presence was unlike any other. The risk now wasn't falling off cliffs, but falling for him. And in that moment, she laughed softly, not at danger, but at herself. Fearless in the face of death, yet utterly unprepared for the quiet, steady pull of a man who could match her step for step, word for word, heartbeat for heartbeat. The game had changed. The stakes had grown higher. And Amara knew, without fully understanding how, that this dance with fate had become something far more complicated than she had ever imagined. The city was quieter than usual that morning, mist curling around street lamps and coating the sidewalks in a slick sheen. Amara moved with her usual confidence, boots clicking against the wet pavement as she navigated the winding alleys and narrow streets. But something felt different. The air was heavy, charged, like a warning whispered through the fog. She had grown accustomed to danger, thrived on it even, but today, the unease clung to her skin like a second layer. Her instincts told her to keep moving, to stay alert, but the thrill she craved seemed tainted. A shadow flickered at the edge of her vision, and she froze, scanning the deserted street. Nothing. Just the fog, curling and twisting around lampposts and doorways. Then she heard it, a low, grinding noise, metal scraping against metal. Her heart jumped. Without thinking, she turned a corner and found herself staring at a massive delivery truck, careening down the street far too fast. The driver had lost control. Panic surged through the bystanders, who screamed and scattered. Amara's mind acted before fear could take root. She bolted, sprinting toward the truck's projected path, instincts honed from years of life-threatening stunts kicking in. But she was too close. The truck skidded around a corner, and the last-second leap she attempted barely saved her from being crushed. She landed hard on the wet pavement, pain shooting through her leg, and rolled to her feet, breath ragged. Her heart pounded, not from excitement, but from something sharper, something that gnawed at her carefully maintained composure. And then she felt him, Adrian. Calm, steady, and unerringly present, he had appeared almost silently at her side, hands reaching for her arm to steady her. "Amara," he said quietly, voice carrying an authority that anchored her racing pulse, "step back. Now." She bristled, instinctively pulling free, but it was too late. Another skid, a horn blaring, and the truck swerved dangerously close. Without hesitation, Adrian grabbed her hand, yanking her behind a sturdy lamp post just as the vehicle skidded past. She stumbled into him, chest pressed to his, rain plastering her hair to her forehead. The proximity, the intensity of the moment, stole her breath more effectively than any cliff jump ever had. For a moment, silence fell, broken only by the pounding of her heart and the distant wail of sirens. Amara's eyes met Adrian's, and in them, she saw the calm she had come to trust, and something else. Concern. A rare, unguarded emotion she wasn't used to seeing directed at her. "You okay?" he asked, voice soft, yet firm. I'm fine," she said, brushing rain and grit from her coat, trying to mask the tremor in her hands. But she wasn't fine. Her adrenaline was spiking, and her chest tightened, not just from the near-death experience, but from the closeness, from the undeniable awareness of Adrian's presence. He studied her carefully, silent for a moment. Then he said, almost gently, "Even you can't outrun danger every time. You don't have to face it alone." The word struck her. Amara, fearless in the face of death, found herself hesitating. She had never let anyone in, never allowed herself to depend on someone else. Yet here he was, steady as a rock, offering protection without judgment, without condescension. And in that offer, she felt something unfamiliar: vulnerability. She wanted to protest, to brush him off with a quip, to laugh at the seriousness of it all. But the words caught in her throat. Her usual bravado faltered, leaving behind a raw awareness of mortality she rarely allowed herself to feel. Fear. Gratitude. Confusion. They swirled together in a dizzying mix. Adrian didn't press. He simply stayed close, letting her regain her balance, his hand lingering near hers. The storm had passed, but the tension remained, thicker than any rain-soaked fog. She realized then that this danger, this moment, was different. It wasn't just a test of skill or courage. It was a test of trust, of the heart she had kept locked away behind reckless stunts and sarcastic laughter. Thanks, she said finally, voice quieter than usual. He nodded, not letting go of her gaze. "You're welcome. And remember, even the strongest can fall." Amara laughed, a short, breathless sound, but it wasn't the triumphant laughter she usually offered the world. It carried an edge of something else: awareness, humility, and a spark of something new. She realized with a start that she was drawn to him, not just by curiosity, but by the calm certainty he brought into her chaotic life. The very thought unsettled her more than the truck ever had. As they walked away from the scene, side by side, the city returning to its normal rhythm around them, she couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. Danger had returned, yes, but it had arrived with an unexpected companion. A companion who made her question her independence, her need to face everything alone, and her carefully guarded heart. For the first time, Amara understood that life-threatening stunts were no longer the only risk she would face. Love, vulnerability, and trust had entered her world, and they were far more unpredictable than any cliff, storm, or reckless leap she had ever survived. The evening air was soft, almost forgiving, as Amara and Adrian walked along the river that cut through the city. The water shimmered with reflections of the streetlights, and the usual city noise had faded into a quiet murmur. For the first time in a long while, Amara felt a calmness settle over her, a calmness that frightened her almost as much as the storms and cliffs she chased. They walked side by side, neither speaking at first. Adrian's presence was steady, like the river beside them, and she felt drawn to it, even as she tried to resist. The silence was comfortable, yet charged with something neither of them dared name aloud. Finally, Adrian broke the quiet. "You've always lived at the edge," he said softly, eyes fixed on the water. "Chasing danger, laughing at death, but what about life in between?" Amara laughed, low and short, shaking her head. "Life in between? That's overrated. Life's best moments are the ones that make your heart race, that make you feel alive." She smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "Besides, I don't have time for the ordinary." Adrian glanced at her, reading the bravado like an open book. "Do you ever stop to wonder if maybe there's more than just thrill?" His voice was calm, patient, almost teasing. "Maybe something worth feeling, even if it scares you." Amara stopped mid-step, caught off guard. For once, she couldn't find a sharp reply. Instead, she felt a flicker deep inside, a spark she had long denied. I don't know," she admitted quietly, almost to herself. "I've always thought that if I show too much, if I let anyone in, I'll lose myself." Adrian nodded, understanding more than she expected. "I think the strongest people are the ones who let themselves be seen." who take the risk of being vulnerable. Not everyone can handle it, but some can, if you let them. Her chest tightened. Vulnerability. Such a dangerous word, heavier than any cliff edge or storm she had faced. Her hands curled into fists at her sides, trying to anchor herself. "I've lost people before," she confessed, voice shaking slightly. "Friends. Family. Loved ones. I learned the hard way that letting people in hurts." Adrian's eyes softened. "And yet, you still take risks. Not just with life, but with connection. Maybe you're braver than you think, not in spite of fear, but because of it." Amara's gaze fell to the shimmering water. She hadn't realized she was trembling. Fear wasn't the only thing making her pulse race, it was his words, his presence, the quiet certainty he offered that life could be more than daring stunts and near-death escapes. He was showing her that being alive could mean more than surviving, it could mean feeling. Fully. Honestly. "I don't even know why I let myself talk to you like this," she admitted, voice barely above a whisper. "I usually laugh at danger, at pain, at everything. But not with you. Not in this moment. I feel exposed." Adrian reached out, a slow, deliberate movement, and placed his hand near hers, just close enough that the warmth was felt without pressure. "Maybe that's the point," he said softly. "To feel. To risk being hurt, because it's the only way to truly live." Amara swallowed hard, heart hammering. She laughed, a small, almost incredulous sound, but it wasn't the usual fearless laugh she used to mock danger. This one carried weight, tenderness, and a realization she couldn't deny. She was alive in ways she had never admitted to herself, alive because of him. The river reflected the city lights, golden and trembling like the emotions she struggled to contain. She realized that her heart, which she had kept so fiercely guarded, was opening, hesitantly, carefully, like a flower in a storm. The realization frightened her. She had always laughed at danger, but now she feared something far more unpredictable, the pull of her own feelings. "Amara," Adrian said softly, as if reading her thoughts, "it's okay to be afraid. It's okay to let someone in. You don't have to be fearless all the time." Her lips parted, unsure what to say. No one had ever spoken to her like this. No one had ever understood that beneath the daring stunts and jokes, there was someone who longed for connection, for understanding, for a heart that could match hers. And then it hit her. She could laugh at danger all she wanted, but not at her heart. Not with him. For the first time, she realized that being alive wasn't just about surviving the storm or climbing cliffs. It was about letting someone share the journey, letting herself feel, and embracing the fragile, beautiful risk of love. She took a tentative step closer, their shoulders brushing, and felt a warmth spread through her chest. It was terrifying and exhilarating all at once. For a moment, she let herself imagine a life not just filled with daring feats, but with shared moments, with trust, with someone who understood the heartbeat behind her fearless laughter. Her voice was barely audible, yet steady with quiet conviction. I think I'm ready to feel. Not just for a moment, but fully. Even if it hurts." Adrian's hand brushed hers, a soft, reassuring touch. His eyes held hers, steady, patient, and full of a promise she wasn't yet ready to name. The city lights shimmered on the water, reflecting their quiet moment of confession. The woman who had laughed at death had learned something new. Courage wasn't just surviving danger. Courage was opening your heart, facing the possibility of pain, and still choosing to live fully. And in that moment, Amara understood that life, like love, was worth the risk. The sun had just begun its slow descent behind the jagged skyline, casting long shadows across the abandoned quarry where Amara and Adrian now stood. The air was thick with dust and anticipation, and the silence was almost deafening. Neither of them spoke at first, each lost in their own thoughts. But both were aware of the challenge ahead. This wasn't just another stunt. It wasn't just another dare. This was a test of trust, courage, and, though neither would admit it yet, hearts. Amara's boots crunched over the uneven ground as she surveyed the cliff face ahead, taller and more treacherous than any she had climbed before. Her pulse quickened, not from fear of the climb, but from the presence of Adrian beside her. He didn't give instructions, didn't offer warnings. He simply stood there, calm, observing her with those steady eyes that made her want to be brave, even when her own instincts whispered caution. "You ready?" Adrian asked, voice low, measured. Amara smirked, trying to mask the flutter in her chest. "I was born ready." He raised an eyebrow, a hint of amusement in his expression. "We'll see." Step by step, they ascended, moving in near-perfect synchrony. Each handhold, each precarious foothold tested not just her strength, but her trust in him. The quarry was littered with loose stones, jagged edges, and the ghosts of failed climbs. One misstep could spell disaster. And yet, she didn't falter. Not entirely. Not with him. Halfway up, Amara lost her grip on a slippery ledge. Instinctively, she froze, heart leaping into her throat. Before fear could consume her, Adrian's hand was there, steady and sure, gripping hers and anchoring her. "Trust me," he said simply. No hesitation, no doubt, just calm certainty. She hesitated only for a heartbeat, and then let go of the panic, letting herself rely on him. It was a small act, but monumental. The woman who laughed at death, who danced on cliffs and storms, had just taken the first real emotional risk of her life. As they climbed higher, the wind whipped around them, tugging at hair and clothes, carrying the scent of dust and rain. Amara realized with a start that the thrill she felt now wasn't just from the climb. It was from sharing it. From trusting someone else with her life, and perhaps more dangerously, with her heart. Adrian glanced at her, and for the first time, she noticed something subtle in his expression, a hint of admiration, yes, but also vulnerability. He, too, had risks to take, not just physical, but emotional. Their silence carried the weight of unspoken words, a tension that neither had yet named. The final stretch loomed before them, a narrow ledge that ran along the edge of the cliff, barely wide enough for their feet, with a drop that made the stomach turn. Amara swallowed hard. This was it. She could turn back, but she didn't. She stepped forward, focusing on Adrian, his presence anchoring her courage. "You trust me?" he asked quietly. "I do," she said, voice firm despite the fear racing through her veins. Step by step, they crossed, balancing not just on stone, but on the fragile trust they were building. One slip, one misjudged move, and it could all end in disaster. And yet, it didn't. They reached the other side together, hearts pounding, lungs burning, but alive, stronger, and more connected than before. Amara exhaled, a laugh escaping her lips, short and breathless. "We make a pretty good team," she said, teasing, yet the warmth in her eyes betrayed a deeper truth. Adrian smiled, brushing dust from his coat. "Better than good. We survived it, together. And that, for me, counts for more than any stunt." Her chest tightened. She realized she wasn't just exhilarated from the climb. She was exhilarated from the trust, the connection, the subtle thrill of opening her heart to someone who respected her independence yet matched her daring. The stakes had shifted from survival to something more intimate, more profound, emotional courage. The realization hit her with both excitement and fear. Being brave wasn't just about jumping off cliffs or facing storms, it was about taking risks in the heart, letting someone in, and trusting that the leap wouldn't destroy her. And in Adrian, she had found a partner for this uncharted territory. As they sat at the edge of the cliff, legs dangling over the abyss, the wind tugging at their hair, Amara turned to him, eyes searching his. "I never thought, trusting someone could feel like this," she admitted. Adrian's gaze softened. "It's the ultimate risk," he said quietly. "The one that scares more than any storm or cliff. But if you survive it, the reward is unlike anything else." Amara's lips curved into a small smile, eyes reflecting both fear and hope. She had survived storms, cliffs, and countless dangers, but the most daring thing she had ever done was opening her heart. And for the first time, she realized that the reward, trust, love, connection, was worth every risk. The sun dipped lower, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Amara leaned back slightly, letting the wind wash over her. She laughed, not at danger, but at herself, at the unexpected journey her life had taken. Danger had always been her companion, but now, so had someone else. Someone who made her feel alive in ways she had never imagined. And in that moment, she understood, bravery wasn't just surviving the storm, it was daring to feel, daring to trust, and daring to love. The city was quiet that evening, the streets bathed in the golden glow of the setting sun. Amara walked beside Adrian, her heart still racing from their earlier climb, but the adrenaline had been replaced by a different kind of tension, a quiet, intimate anticipation she could not name. The world around them seemed to fade, leaving only the two of them and the unspoken connection that had grown through every challenge, every shared risk, and every vulnerable moment. Adrian led her to a small rooftop garden perched atop an old building, a hidden sanctuary of flowers, lanterns, and soft benches. The city skyline stretched beyond, jagged and alive, yet softened by the warm light. He motioned for her to sit, and she did, curiosity mingling with a sense of wonder she rarely allowed herself. "Amara," he began, voice steady but low, carrying a weight she hadn't anticipated. "We've faced storms, cliffs, and dangers that could have ended us more times than I can count. You've taught me the thrill of life, the joy of daring, but there's another kind of risk, one we haven't faced yet." Amara tilted her head, sensing the gravity in his tone. Her heartbeat quickened, not from fear, but from the awareness of the moment. She tried to mask it with a grin, but it faltered. "Another risk?" she asked softly. "Yes," he said, reaching into his coat pocket. He pulled out a small, carefully wrapped box, holding it in both hands as if it were the most delicate thing in the world. "One that isn't about surviving the next stunt, or laughing in the face of danger, but about the heart." Amara's pulse surged. She had faced death countless times, yet the vulnerability in his eyes made her feel exposed in a way no cliff or storm ever had. He knelt before her, not with pomp, not with ceremony, but with the raw sincerity that had defined every moment they had shared. "I've watched you dance with life, fearless and unstoppable," Adrian said, voice trembling slightly, betraying the depth of his emotion. "I've watched you laugh at danger, survive it, even love it, but I've also seen the moments you let yourself be human. The moments you let someone in. The moments you let me in." Amara's throat tightened. Her usual defenses, her humor, and her bravado seemed small and fragile in the presence of this confession. She could feel the truth in his words, the unspoken promise that whatever came next would not diminish her, but elevate her life in ways she had never dared imagine. "Amara," he said, opening the box to reveal a ring that caught the fading sunlight, "I don't want to face life alone. I don't want you to face it alone. Will you take the greatest risk with me? Will you marry me?" Time seemed to suspend. The wind whispered through the flowers around them, the city below faded into a soft hum, and Amara's breath caught in her throat. For a heartbeat, she wanted to laugh, to deflect, to tease, to hide, but the weight of the moment grounded her. This wasn't a stunt, a cliff, or a challenge. This was the leap her heart had never taken before. Her mind raced, memories of storms, near-death moments, and shared laughter flashing through her thoughts. She thought of the trust they had built, the vulnerabilities they had shared, the quiet moments of confession and connection that had reshaped the way she understood courage. And for the first time, she realized that bravery wasn't just surviving danger, it was surrendering to love, to trust, to the unknown. Amara's lips trembled, a nervous laugh escaping before her emotions caught up. You actually did it," she whispered, a mixture of disbelief, joy, and awe in her voice. "I did," Adrian said softly, eyes shining with hope and certainty. "And I'll keep doing it, every day, if you'll let me." Tears pricked at the corners of her eyes, a rare and honest display of emotion she had long suppressed. Her hand reached for his, trembling slightly, and she felt warmth, reassurance, and the unspoken bond that had grown over weeks of challenges, laughter, and shared risks. I think I can," she admitted finally, voice breaking yet steady. "I think I can take that risk. With you." Adrian's smile broke into something uncontainable, and he slid the ring onto her finger. It felt heavier than metal, it felt like a promise, a culmination of everything they had shared, and the opening of a future that was both exhilarating and terrifying. Amara leaned back slightly, looking at the city stretching beneath them, and laughed, a full, unguarded laugh, unlike any she had allowed herself in years. It was fearless, not because she had faced death, but because she had chosen life. Chosen love. Chosen trust. Adrian pulled her close, and for a moment, they simply held each other, the wind tangling their hair, the city lights shimmering, and the sky painted with the colors of dusk. The proposal wasn't just a question, it was a transformation. The woman who had laughed at death had now laughed at life itself, embracing the most daring leap of all. And in that rooftop sanctuary, amidst flowers, lanterns, and the vast expanse of the city below, Amara felt it fully for the first time. Courage was not just surviving danger. Courage was surrendering to the heart, risking love, and stepping into a future that was unknown, unpredictable, and infinitely beautiful. She smiled, pressing her forehead to his, voice soft yet certain. "I accept." Adrian's arms tightened around her, a quiet laughter mingling with hers, and together they faced the city, the cliffs, the storms, and the limitless horizon of life, love, and possibility. The sun rose over the city, painting it in warm shades of gold and pink. Amara stood on the balcony of her apartment, the wind tugging at her hair, and for a moment, she simply breathed. The world felt larger now, full of possibility, yet anchored in a quiet intimacy she had never allowed herself before. Life was still thrilling, still unpredictable, but now it was shared. Adrian joined her, his presence calm and steady, as natural as the morning light spilling over the rooftops. He handed her a cup of coffee, the warmth seeping into her hands and grounding her. They didn't speak immediately, words weren't necessary. The silence was comfortable, alive with the bond they had built through storms, cliffs, and whispered confessions. "Morning," she said finally, her voice soft but playful. "Morning," he replied, matching her tone. A smile curved his lips, one that spoke of shared secrets, quiet laughter, and the unspoken understanding that they had survived far more than either could have imagined. Amara looked out at the city, reflecting on the journey that had brought her here, from daring stunts and near-death escapes to this calm, steady joy. She realized that life was still a dance with danger, yes, but it was also a dance with love, with trust, with connection. And for the first time, she understood that both kinds of risk were exhilarating in their own way. Their days unfolded with a balance that neither of them had expected. They still chased thrills, climbing cliffs and racing storms, laughing at danger as they always had. But now, each adventure was shared, each heartbeat mirrored in the other's presence. Amara discovered that the rush of adrenaline was enhanced, not diminished, by someone who understood her, who matched her step for step, yet allowed her independence to remain intact. One afternoon, perched atop a cliff overlooking the ocean, Amara laughed, the wind catching her voice and carrying it across the waves. Adrian stood beside her, hand brushing hers, a quiet smile on his face. "You still laugh at danger," he said softly, "but it's different now, isn't it?" Amara glanced at him, her eyes bright with the thrill and warmth of shared life. "It is," she admitted, breathless from the climb and the view. "It's not just about surviving anymore. It's about living, fully. With someone who makes it worth it." He squeezed her hand gently. "And worth the risk." She laughed again, louder this time, the sound fearless and free. "Especially the risk," she said. Life continued, each day blending thrill, laughter, and quiet reflection. They navigated challenges together, from minor mishaps to unpredictable storms, always emerging stronger, always learning to trust each other more. Amara discovered that joy could coexist with danger, that love could coexist with independence, and that laughter, her signature laughter at peril, now included warmth, tenderness, and shared wonder. In quiet evenings, they would sit together by the fire or on a rooftop, talking about dreams, fears, and hopes. Amara shared stories she had never told anyone, memories of loss, moments of loneliness, the inner turmoil behind her fearless facade. Adrian, in turn, revealed the sacrifices and regrets that had shaped him, his calm exterior concealing a heart that had loved, lost, and learned to endure. Through it all, the connection between them deepened. The woman who had once dared death at every turn now dared to love, dared to trust, dared to embrace life with all its unpredictability. And Adrian, who had always been calm in the face of danger, found exhilaration in the shared journey of hearts, laughter, and whispered dreams. One evening, as the city lights flickered on and the stars began to emerge, Amara and Adrian walked hand in hand through a quiet park. The wind carried the scent of flowers and distant rain, and the world felt suspended, as if acknowledging the completion of a journey and the start of a new one. Amara paused, looking up at the stars, and let out a laugh, clear, full, and alive. It was the same laughter that had once mocked death, yet now it carried joy, hope, and love. Adrian squeezed her hand, and she squeezed back, the connection tangible, grounding, and infinite. "You've changed me," she said softly, voice full of wonder. "And you've changed me," he replied, eyes reflecting the city lights, the stars, and her own radiant energy. "We've changed each other. For the better." Amara smiled, pressing her forehead to his. "I still laugh at danger," she said, "but now it's different. It's not just me anymore. It's us." Adrian's arms wrapped around her, steady and unwavering, and together they looked out at the city, the cliffs, the ocean beyond, and the endless horizon of life ahead. Danger still existed, storms would come, cliffs would beckon, but now, they faced them together, hearts intertwined, laughter echoing across the heights and valleys of life. The woman who once dared death alone now embraced life fully, with love, courage, and hope. And as Amara laughed once more, holding Adrian's hand, she felt the exhilarating certainty that true courage meant not just surviving danger, but choosing to live, to love, and to trust. And for the first time in her life, she felt completely, irreversibly alive.